So initially I was going to be quiet about what happened because I'm not really a fan of burning my bridges, and I think out of respect for Ender, for a person that gave my team a home to begin our competitive journey with, it was just not something that I was going to do. But that was before he blocked me from messaging him on Discord, and I wouldn't be surprised if he removed me from my friends list as well. And I'm not upset about it. That's not the light that I'm viewing it in. It's more of a so that's how it's going to be kind of way. I didn't even get a chance to exchange pleasantries and say thank you for allowing us to play in your league, etc., etc. So it's placed me in a position where I'm not upset because, it would be incredibly childish to get upset over somebody blocking you, but all it's done to me is verify that I've made the right decision first and foremost, and it's given me the green light to kind of air out some of my withheld criticism of Tier 1 and what made me and my team so disgruntled enough to leave. I guess you could see this as almost like a negative Yelp review, I guess, because I'm not going to get personal or go on the attack really, but I think the things that I'm going to talk about have meaning for the people that care or want to be in the know, because I was a part of the staff of Tier 1 from right around the beginning of when WAM started in Tier 1. So that being said, this is going to be a longer video. I've got a lot to explain and talk about. In the background is some Battlefield 4 gameplay. Been going back and playing a lot of it recently. This was one of my first games back, so you'll definitely see the rust. And I'm still trying to work out my settings a little bit. But this is Dragon Valley, one of my favorite maps ever. I love this map, so I hope you enjoy that in the background. So after some time to digest everything, I've kind of been able to take a look at the bigger picture, and the more and more I think about it, the more and more I realize that my time in Tier 1 really kind of serves as the perfect metaphor for my growth as a player, a person, and a teammate. And as I'll get into, the reality is that Tier 1 is not what it appears to be if you are on the outside looking in. Now, I'm going to split the video into two different sections because I'm going to try and keep everything together as well and keep everything organized. Because as I said, it's a lot to cover, and I'm honestly not sure how else I'm going to organize the video, so I'm splitting the video into two sections, the first being my issues with the league itself and its structure, and then in the next section I'm going to talk more about my personal dealings with Ender and the people in the community that inevitably made me decide to leave. Now, as far as the league stuff is concerned, I need to do a little bit of backtracking because a lot of this is context-based and it does require quite a bit of history because I think a lot of my issues with the league have emerged not so much because of the status quo for what the league is, but because my team and myself have grown and progressed past that status quo. A short recap. WAM started off as a pub stacking odds platoon, and we began playing competitive in late December and early January. We had no idea what we were doing when we faced teams like 6Gs back when they were decent, and PT, and we got our asses kicked. And we continued to get our asses kicked until we became a top team in Tier 1. And it kind of goes to show you the development that I've gone through, because I openly said in a video I posted about a year ago that I was one of the best players in the world. And I had no idea what was really awaiting me, what was really out there. I mean, I was just a pub stomper with auto rotation aim assist on, and I didn't know anything, and I was a nobody. So we practice and we practice, and we are finding our groove, and then the whole Triple V rule fuck incident occurs, which I'm not going to get into that much detail. I've ranted about that enough, and if you really want to know more, there's a link in the description, and I'll put the video at the end screen in the end. But that incident really marks the downfall of WAM in Tier 1, and it's a nice segue to my first major issue with Tier 1, and that is that Tier 1 has serious problems with rule fucking. And it's completely ridiculous to me that a league that prides itself on being a non-toxic community, a league that enforces strict rules and has fair competition, has actually none of those things under the surface. In one season of being in Tier 1, 4 teams got rule fucked or had attempts to be rule fucked, including WAM, Dawn Squad, TSL, and SRDS. Now sure, a few of those teams did actually break the rules, but WAM and TSL did not. Now part of that is because the rules themselves have a lot of exploitable gray areas, but the other half of it is that there are some real bitch teams in Tier 1, and I mean really bitchy teams, or at least really bitchy leaders. I've come to know a few of the Triple V players, and they are pretty cool, shout out to Bougie and Beast, but their leaders are fucking morons. Pete Dog is the delusional 40-year-old man that combs rosters to make sure that teams that are better than his don't have ringers. LGD is an African team that whines more than a newborn baby. You know, if there's anything that's an inconvenience to them, they cry and cry about it. You know, their fans cry that Africa is being quote-unquote screwed over. They refuse to play servers that are not their own unless they have to. And they tried to rule fuck in the final versus TSL after TSL added additional players that were cleared by Ender. Does that sound familiar? You know, there's kind of a developing trend here. Now, to Tier 1's credit, all of the other rule fucking incidents were researched and investigated thoroughly. And in my opinion, the right decision was made, but WAM's wasn't, and that kind of stings. You know, the Triple V rule fucking was handled horribly, and despite it being over, and I'm over it, I don't feel satisfied in what happened to my team, and I don't think I'll ever will, because you take a young team like WAM, who's excited to play comp and see what's out there, and you just got destroyed by a competitive team and they rule fucked you. How is that going to encourage you to get better and enjoy comp? And I think it really killed a lot of our momentum, and I'm still quite frankly a little salty about it. Now I'm trying my hardest not to sound vindictive and overbearing, and I want to keep this as professional as I can, because at the end of the day, people are going to react better to reasoning and information. They are going to react to some name calling and finger pointing, despite that last part of that rant. Apart from rule fucking, one of the league's biggest problems is that the league has little to no competition whatsoever. Now, some of these teams are legitimately pub platoons in the body of a competitive team, and I know you can't see me right now, but I am air quoting competitive team, and that's fine. You know, you can have these types of happy-go-lucky teams in your league. You just can't slap the word competitive over it because it's a little bit of a false advertisement. In other words, Tier 1 is a non-competitive league. Some of the teams, if you put them in a public match and you took away their tags and you didn't know they were a competitive team, you wouldn't think twice about them being a random no-name platoon. And I'm not going to target teams specifically because I do have friends in a lot of those platoons and I don't want to hurt feelings, but some of these teams are among the worst in Battlefield. And it's not really even close. And so when WAM takes a look at the future of what it would be like in Tier 1, the future essentially for us is a guaranteed game with TSL, basically the other best team in the league, and a few matches with EU and South African teams in which we would lag our asses off, and it wouldn't be a fun experience. So in that sense, it makes complete sense why the league has little to offer my team, especially when we are facing better competition that helps us improve as players elsewhere. It's kind of a meme at this point, but it's really pretty true, and that's the fact that one way or another, good teams don't stay in Tier 1. They are either rule fucked out, or they leave on their own terms. Now, let's talk about the rule set a bit, because it's really closely related to the train of thought of Tier 1 not being competitive, and this is the point where you really see my personal progress as a player, because I used to swear by this rule set, and now I can't stand it. And this is kind of the clue that makes everything make sense as to why Tier 1's level of competition just isn't on par with other leagues. This rule set I'm speaking of course, is the no-rule rule set. The only thing that is banned is auto-rotation aim assist, and that actually didn't even used to be banned, which, oh boy, you know, that's mind-blowing to me. But going from Tier 1 rules to something like an ESB rule set, for example, which is the most popular rule set, is, you know, utterly eye-opening. And the reason it is so eye-opening, and it's something that people kind of forget about, is that competitive players will exploit anything that they can to get an edge on their opponent. In ESB rule sets, they take away everything that you hate about Battlefield 1 and balance it out and make it an enjoyable experience. Everything is allowed in Tier 1, and boy, do people exploit it. There is so much spam. There's dynamite spam, there's gas spam, there's fire grenade spam, SMG08 and other high rate of fire weapon spam. And there's all of that, and the game is fundamentally unplayable at that stage and really rage-inducing. You know, anywhere outside of Tier 1, ESB rules are considered to be the best. You know, inside Tier 1 rules are the best. Now, I understand being different from other leagues in that aspect, but in this case, it's not a differential opinion and being different. It's being utterly blind to what is competitive and what is not competitive. I'm sorry, but nade spam is not competitive. Gas is not a strategy, it is a nuisance. Weapons like the SMG-08 and the Martini Henry have no place in competitive because people can exploit it. And it really sucks because I learned competitive in this rule set, and in some ways it's always going to be a part of me, and that sucks. I had to use Dynamite so much in Tier 1 because I had to. It was literally Dynamite or be Dynamited sometimes. And I had to use it so much that I literally became a master at it, and it's not competitive despite it being allowed in some ESBO rule sets. And here is where it all kind of comes together. Tier 1 teams rely on this rule set to be good because they think it's competitive, when the reality is that if you take away their rules, they would be shark bait for some of these real competitive teams. And this point really kind of hurts for me because I personally invested a few hours trying to convince these teams otherwise that these rules were holding them back, and they didn't listen. You know, I tried to get T5 domination into Tier 1 as a tournament, and not only did they shoot the idea down immediately because it was unfamiliar to them, they said, let's make it a 12v12. I mean, you can't be that fucking stupid. Any competitive player that has played a T5 before know how absolutely insane T12 domination sounds like, and it's all because Tier 1 has this mantra of being the biggest and the best league, offering these big matches, and that's fine. That's what makes Tier 1 good and different in that aspect, but sometimes things just don't fit like that. You know, you can't wear a shoe that is not your shoe size. Tier 1 teams are sheltered. They think that they are good. They think their rule set is good. And the reality is that they would get picked apart by most teams if they actually knew what comp was really like outside the walls of Tier 1. You know, I see teams come into that league every day thinking that Tier 1 is what true Battlefield competitive is like, and it honestly could not be the furthest thing from it. And it's almost like those teams are brainwashed and are robbed of a real competitive experience, and they are robbed of learning from really good players. I have learned more from friends I've made in the past 2 months of being in other leagues than I have in 6 months of being in Tier 1. And now that the league itself is kind of out of the way, I want to talk into my personal experiences with the staff and Ender himself over the past few months now. I volunteered myself to be a caster in Tier 1 because it genuinely looked fun, and I wanted to give my services of my real life career, God willing, to the league so they could have an authentic competitive experience in terms of representation. And say what you will about Tier 1 overall, Ender has spent so much of his own personal money on this league, and his production value is outstanding. His website is outstanding, and you need to commend him and respect him for that, because no other league even comes close to the production value that he has besides maybe BFN. Now, that being said, there are a lot of structural behind-the-scene things that make Tier 1 not really work, and it starts from the top. Tier 1 is run, of course, by Ender, but there is a committee made up of a few team leaders that will make all the decisions besides Ender. But these same people also play in the league. You can see where I'm going with this. You cannot, under any circumstances, have a select few leaders that play in your league be in power positions like that, because they will be biased, and it will lead to unfair rulings. It would be different if every team in the league had a representative in the committee. That would be fine. But the committee is run by a few leaders in which they also participate in the league, and you cannot trust them to be 100% unbiased in their ruling. And that was most definitely seen in the WAM versus Triple V ruling, because you wouldn't have guessed it, but there is a Triple V member on the committee for sure, possibly 2. There are 2 Triple V members as North American moderators, so I guess, you know, you can kind of say that the leadership in this thing is a little one-sided, and they are a little irrational and pedantic sometimes. I mean, people got kicked from the Discord for using the word Randy. Now, unless I missed something, that's not a racial slur, that's not a bad word, but it is a word that Tier 1 doesn't like. Now, as far as Ender himself is concerned, it's a bit of a complicated story, and this is where the video is going to start wrapping up, because we are getting into some more recent events, and this is already a very long video. But as a caster, I've had a lot of interaction with Ender. I know how he is, and I know how he is going to react to this video if he ever watches it, or even if he gets this far into the video. Which, if you have, respect to you. You know, his reaction is going to be something along the lines of a defensive response, you know, pulling up his numbers, claiming that Tier 1 is succeeding with or without me and my team, and, you know, they don't need me or WAM, which is fine, because technically he is correct. You know, Tier 1 is prospering as much as people hate it. Tier 1 isn't going to die from a lack of teams, because as I said earlier, you can pull random teams from off the street, give them the tier 1 rule set, and they'll be okay. But if tier 1 dies, it's going to be because Ender's staff impedes him more than they help him, and he is going to basically drown in stress. I have never seen such unhelpful people in my life. You know, the coordinators don't work together, the mods are ban happy, and he doesn't have a very good business sense either. He would rather kick me and my team from his league because I associate with people he doesn't like, despite the fact that without me, his streams put coffee to sleep. And he'll be the first one to tell you that too. And it's because I've been working more for his league than other staff members that I have a certain extra level of commitment. I was asked to spy on other leagues for Ender. I said no. I was asked to withdraw my team from CFL. I said no. And what finally got WAM kicked from Tier 1 is that he asked me to remove players, friends, and teammates from my team because he didn't like them. I said no. It's a complicated history, Ender and PT. Ender kicked PT and a various amount of other teams from Tier 1 because they used ringers, and thus, the hatred was born. Now, the most important details are that PT and other teams hate Ender so much that they found his personal information, and they posted it publicly, and the police got involved. Now, I'm not endorsing this. In fact, what those guys did to Ender was 100% wrong, and it shouldn't have been done, period. But for every time somebody mentions that incident, I can tell you I've seen screenshots of Ender verbally threatening these players and harassing them, sometimes violently and personally. Now, it's not my place to choose sides, and I won't choose sides, but I will say this. Ender does have the right to hate these players, but the players have been more than justified in how they attack Ender back because of what he said to them. So it's a give and take, and unfortunately somebody went too far, and now there is some victim playing. The point is that it's ugly, and I have come to befriend some of these players that Ender hates, and I've come to find out that they are nowhere near as bad as the horror stories that I've heard about in Tier 1. Are they toxic? 100% yes. There's been some really messed up things that I have seen said and people have accused people of, but they are not malicious unless you attack them first, and that's where Ender really made his mistake. In the past 2 weeks, I've been kicked from Tier 1 Discord for joking around with a mod. I got bitched out by Ender in direct messaging because my friends that he doesn't like joined on me without my knowledge or control, and we beat him in a public lobby. He called them autistic, worthless, and threatened to kick me then and there just because they joined on me in a public lobby. And just a few days ago, he gave me an ultimatum to either leave Tier 1 and associate with my friends and teammates, or kick my friends to the curb and stay in Tier 1. Here's the thing, man. You don't own me, you don't own my team, and just because you don't like my teammates doesn't mean that I need to remove them from the team. The fact that you're kicking a team just because they have members that you don't like is unprofessional and sad. And if you thought for a second that I would kick my friends just to stay in a league that we've already more or less dominated in, then you're mistaken. You have moles in other league chats monitoring the chat for anything said about Tier 1. They give you screenshots of my criticism about the league, and instead of debunking those criticisms or addressing the criticisms head on, you DM me and bitch me out about it. People are scared to speak any criticism because even if the criticisms are true, you ignore them and or shoot them down and kick them. No one should be afraid to speak up and voice critiques on how to run a league. It is the community that in the end supports your league, so why wouldn't you want to listen to their criticisms and make your league better? And if you are shooting down these critiques more than you're accepting them, you're doing things wrong. And forcing teams to choose between their friends and your league, you'll always lose that battle. I tried my hardest and gave a lot of my time and effort to try and help and shape Tier 1 to what it could be, but I guess change isn't something that happens easy there, and that's why WAM left Tier 1.